Next fest is here. I played some demos and I wanted to talk about them. The first thing I played is a whole bunch of Dark and Darker. I believe this is what the kids call an extraction shooter, or a Tarkov-like if you have brain damage. It means that it's a game about looting equipment during a run by gambling what you bring with you. Extract and you keep everything, die and you lose everything. It's got a fantasy setting and the main way you get loot is by opening chests, smashing pots and looting mobs. PvE isn't particularly difficult or engaging, but some enemies, especially bosses, are tanky enough to require higher level gears to reliably kill in a safe amount of time. The main draw is PvP, or at least player interaction. There are 6 classes with different roles that use different weapons and can equip different skills. It's fun to try various combinations, learn each class and see how they match up to each other. The Rogue, for example, is the dedicated jumpscare class, but it comes up short in most straight fights. That's how you play Rogue, I guess. Barbarians just one-shot people. Wizards have the ability to cast spells, and Rangers have the ability to go fuck themselves. In this playtest, they added VoIP. I like video games, they are fun. Shut the fuck up. It's always fun to mess around with strangers, at least in these playtests where people aren't taking things too seriously. I can see you.
And now you don't.
I don't know if this game will have much staying power, but for now it's pretty fun. I'm Harry Potter. You should have worried about Ron Weasley. Then I tried Broken Arrow. It's a wargame clone that also reminds me a little bit of World in Conflict. That's because of the voiced briefings, the circles you have to hold, and the scripted levels replacing the atrocious quasi-skirmishes of Red Dragon. It's promising, but now that wargame clones are popping up left and right, it doesn't seem particularly unique. We'll have to see how the final versions compare to each other. What is pretty unique is a World War I real-time strategy game. The Great War Western Front trademark is probably the worst titled game in this list. It's funny that I played the whole hour-long tutorial and I have no idea how it plays. Seriously, this is way too verbose and long. I know that tutorials aren't easy, but this is too much. The historical battle I played gave me the impression that the gameplay is just suppressing with artillery so you can enter the enemy trenches and start actually trading damage instead of being obliterated. I assume it gets better as you unlock more units, tanks and ways to undermine enemy defenses. But as of this demo, the core of the battles felt a bit too simple. Xenonauts is a modern reinterpretation of the original XCOM. It's not a one-to-one recreation, but it's got all the elements: squads, stats, time units, multiple bases, and so on. Xenonauts 2 isn't a sequel story-wise. It's set in 2008 in a Cold War gone long scenario, which is interesting. It immediately introduces a new type of enemy in the Cleaners, a faction of alien-controlled humans who has infiltrated government agencies. Depending on how relevant they'll be throughout the campaign, this already promises some more variety. As a new mission, there are also raids on Cleaner headquarters to gather information. You're not on a time limit, but I assume the reinforcements are infinite, so you have to hurry up. Pretty cool. I'm excited for this game, but it's coming out in early access, and I'd rather just wait for release. Another game I played was Phantom Brigade. In this game, you command a squad of mech pilots that are waging guerrilla warfare against an invading nation. The setting is pretty generic, with invaders only ever being referred to as them. It is subjective and it doesn't really matter, but personally I prefer my mild sci-fi to be more intricate than a Team Fortress map. Still, gameplay is king. How does this game play? Well, it's turn-based in a really interesting way. The turns are actually each just 5 seconds of the battle. You plan your unit's actions in what one of the trailer describes as a simplified video editor. Then you press execute and see it happen. The concept reminded me a lot of Atlas Reactor, which was one of my favorite games, but it doesn't quite compare. You can see every enemy action, including who they're gonna shoot at, so as long as you take your time to properly see what's happening, you're never in real danger. I guess it all depends on how important the campaign map ends up being. The appeal might be having to pick your fights rather than just the fights themselves. One thing that would make battles less clunky would be allowing the player to place movement actions anywhere on the timeline instead of having to manually place wait actions beforehand. I'm sure I'd feel more excited about this game if it weren't for Atlas Reactor and Into the Breach spoiling me when it comes to prediction-based gameplay. But on its own, the demo was polished, good looking and fun. I'm sure the final version will play better. Going back to zombies, I played Infection Free Zone. It's a city builder set in the zombie apocalypse. It's got an emphasis on scavenging for supplies, and it has a gimmick where you will be able to play using every city on Earth as the map. I don't know how this works, but it feels like this is the kind of game that should have, if not a handcrafted map, at least a procedurally generated one that balances resources well. But if they can pull it off, it's going to be neat. As someone who's not that much into city builders, I thought the demo was pretty good, but it's really just the very beginning of the game. I'm curious how combat, scavenging and city building will change once your zone gets bigger. Finally, I played Spirited Thief. It's an interesting concept, a turn-based stealth game where you need to steal some loot and leave the level without dying. Levels start by controlling a spirit that scouts the location, marks guards so you can see them behind walls and activates some doors. Then you switch to the more corporeal thieves and the heist itself starts. As the turns go by, more guards will wake up and they will get progressively more aggressive. I liked it, it was pretty fun. It's the kind of game that's heavily dependent on how long and how replayable it is for the price point, but for now, it's promising. I'm also actually interested to see where the story goes. I can't say that for any other game in this list. That's all the demos I played, but I also want to talk about a game that's already out. Just a recommendation if you have nothing to play while you wait for other stuff to come out. Intravenous is a solid top-down stealth game. You play as a vigilante that's taking revenge on a drug-making gang after some junkies kill your brother. This game is really good at mixing stealth and action. Not only the combat works very well and you can gear up specifically for it, you can lose alerted enemies and kill them from the shadow. You're not forced to restart every time you get caught like in a lot of other stealth games. But at the same time, enemies can quickly overwhelm you, so it's still a good idea to stay undetected as much as possible. The levels have a variety of alternative paths to take and you can beat them by killing everyone or nobody. Increasing the difficulty makes bullets more lethal in general, but also reduces saves per level. You can always play a custom difficulty to have both if you prefer. I would recommend it. It's not the longest game, but I think it warrants more than one playthrough just to mess around with different loadouts and playstyles. Okay, that's it. Let me know if I missed anything interesting. Thanks for watching. This is what living in China is like.